In the annals of American criminal history, certain names evoke a chilling sense of dread. But there's one name, perhaps lesser known to some, that deserves a place among these infamous figures: Samuel Little. The true extent of Samuel Little's crimes is only now beginning to come to light, and what we're uncovering is nothing short of staggering. Each victim, a unique soul with their own story, their own dreams, their own loved ones left grappling with the pain of their absence. Samuel Little's entry into the world was far from auspicious, marked by the harsh realities of poverty and instability. This early lack of a consistent, nurturing environment left an indelible mark on Little's psyche. Even as a young boy, Samuel Little exhibited disturbing behaviors that hinted at a deeper well of darkness residing within him. By the age of 15, Little had dropped out of school entirely, his formal education cut short by a toxic mix of academic frustration, social isolation, and escalating behavioral issues. With the structure of school no longer a part of his life, Samuel Little's descent into delinquency accelerated. His brushes with the law culminated in his eventual placement in a juvenile reformatory, a last-ditch effort to curb his burgeoning criminal behavior. The year was 1970. Samuel Little, now a young man hardened by a life of crime and fueled by a dark obsession, was about to cross a chilling threshold from petty thief to cold-blooded killer. The murder of Mary marked a turning point in Samuel Little's life, a descent into a depraved abyss from which there would be no return. He drifted from state to state, city to city, preying on the most vulnerable members of society. Despite his escalating body count and increasingly brazen crimes, Samuel Little seemed to exist in a perverse bubble of invincibility. Little, a master manipulator with a keen understanding of the criminal justice system, exploited these vulnerabilities to his advantage. The year 1972 marked a new chapter in Samuel Little's life, one intertwined with a woman named Jean. Their relationship was a study in contradictions, a bizarre mix of companionship and criminal enterprise. The nature of Jean's knowledge regarding Little's murderous secret remains a chilling mystery. Was she a willing participant in his web of deceit, her silence a form of complicity? Or was she a victim herself, trapped in a relationship with a man whose true nature she never fully grasped? While Little's relationship with Jean provided a semblance of stability, it did nothing to quell the darkness that consumed him. In fact, the years they spent together coincided with some of his most heinous crimes. As he drifted across state lines with Jean by his side, Little's body count continued to rise, each murder a gruesome testament to his insatiable appetite for violence. His victims, often marginalized and forgotten members of society, were mere pawns in Little's twisted game. He preyed on their vulnerabilities, exploiting their need for money, drugs, or simply human connection, luring them into his web of deceit before snuffing out their lives with chilling brutality. Despite his escalating crimes, Little remained a ghost, his true nature hidden beneath a veneer of normalcy. He and Jean blended seamlessly into the underbelly of America, their transient lifestyle allowing them to stay one step ahead of the law. Little became a master of disguise, altering his appearance and blending into different environments with ease, making it nearly impossible for authorities to connect the dots between his crimes. With each passing year, Little's confidence grew, fueled by his ability to evade capture and the knowledge that his victims, often dismissed and forgotten, were unlikely to ever lead the authorities to his door. His reign of terror, a dark and bloody stain on the fabric of America, continued unabated, leaving a trail of devastation and heartbreak in its wake. Samuel Little's reign of terror spanned decades. He moved through shadows, leaving heartbreak and despair. His victims vanished, their stories lost. Advances in forensics and shared information began to close in on him. The hunt was intensifying. Fate had other plans for Samuel Little. In 2012, a minor drug offense in Kentucky led to his arrest. His fingerprints and DNA entered the national database. A DNA match linked him to a cold case in Los Angeles. The victim, Carol Alfred, had been found strangled in 1987. Little was extradited to California, still confident in his arrogance. The game was about to change, driven by science and determination. News of Little's arrest in connection with Carol Alfred's murder sent shockwaves through law enforcement agencies across the country. Could this be the break they had been waiting for? Could this seemingly unremarkable man, with his quiet demeanor and history of petty crime, be the elusive serial killer who had haunted their investigations for years? DNA, the silent witness, held the answer. Samples from Little's arrest were compared to evidence from cold cases across the country. Each test a roll of the dice, a desperate hope for a match that could bring closure to grieving families and finally unmask a monster. The results were nothing short of astounding. One by one, the matches came back. Little's DNA linked him to unsolved murders in states stretching from coast to coast, each case bearing his chilling signature: strangulation, a focus on marginalized victims, and a callous disregard for human life. The true extent of his depravity was only beginning to come to light, the ghost in the machine finally given a name, a face, a horrifying reality. The man who had once moved through the shadows, a phantom leaving a trail of devastation in his wake, was now exposed for the world to see. His face, once easily forgotten, was plastered across newspapers and television screens, his name whispered in hushed tones, a symbol of pure evil. Samuel Little, the Invisible Man, had been rendered visible, the truth of his crimes laid bare by the unyielding power of DNA. In 2014, Samuel Little stood trial for 3 murders in Los Angeles County. The evidence against him was overwhelming, the science undeniable. DNA, the silent witness, spoke for the victims, their voices amplified by the tireless efforts of detectives and prosecutors who had dedicated their lives to seeking justice. Throughout the trial, Little remained defiant, his arrogance unwavering. He seemed to relish in the attention, his ego inflated by the notoriety his crimes had brought him. But the courtroom was not his stage, and the jury, unmoved by his attempts at manipulation, delivered a swift and decisive verdict: guilty. Sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, Samuel Little was finally held accountable for at least a fraction of the pain he had inflicted upon the world. For the families of his victims, the verdict brought a sense of closure, a bittersweet victory tinged with the knowledge that true justice could never truly be served. While Little's conviction marked a turning point in the pursuit of justice, it was merely the tip of the iceberg. The true extent of his crimes, the sheer number of lives he had taken, remained a chilling mystery, a question that would haunt investigators for years to come. But for now at least, Samuel Little was where he belonged, behind bars, his reign of terror finally at an end. The year 2018 marked a chilling turn in the Samuel Little saga, a descent into the darkest recesses of a mind steeped in evil. Little, already serving multiple life sentences for his confirmed murders, made a decision that would send shockwaves through the criminal justice system and beyond. He started talking. What unfolded was not a typical confession, filled with remorse or pleas for forgiveness. Instead, Little embarked on a journey through his own twisted memory palace, recounting his crimes with a chilling detachment that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned investigators. His recall was astonishing, his memory for detail uncanny, as if he'd meticulously cataloged each act of brutality, each life extinguished, in the darkest corners of his mind. He rattled off names, dates, and locations with a chilling precision, painting a horrifying tapestry of violence that spanned decades and stretched across the country. He described his victims' faces, their clothing, the way they begged for their lives. His voice devoid of emotion, a chilling monotone narrating the unthinkable. For Little, these confessions were not about seeking redemption or easing his conscience. They were a twisted form of control, a way to relive his crimes and assert his dominance over the lives he had taken, and the investigators tasked with piecing together his gruesome puzzle. The task of prying open Samuel Little's vault of horrors fell to Texas Ranger James Holland, a veteran investigator known for his ability to connect with even the most hardened criminals. Holland recognized that Little, driven by a perverse need for recognition and a desire to control the narrative of his crimes, would only reveal his secrets on his own terms. Holland employed unconventional tactics, engaging Little in a macabre game of cat and mouse. He appealed to Little's vanity, treating him not as a monster, but as an equal, a master criminal whose work deserved to be acknowledged and understood. He listened patiently as Little recounted his crimes, never judging, never condemning, building a rapport that would ultimately prove crucial in unlocking the truth. Holland's strategy was not without its critics, many questioning the ethics of indulging a killer's ego in pursuit of information. But for Holland, the potential to bring closure to countless grieving families outweighed any moral dilemmas. He understood that Little, a narcissist to his core, craved recognition even more than he craved freedom. As the confessions continued, Holland realized the magnitude of the task before him. Little's memory was a tangled web of names, dates, and locations, many details lost to the passage of time. To corroborate Little's claims, to separate fact from fiction in the mind of a confessed killer would require a Herculean effort, a nationwide investigation unlike any other. In a bizarre and unsettling twist, Samuel Little's confessions were not limited to words alone. He began to draw, his canvases becoming windows into the darkest recesses of his psyche. Using colored pencils provided by Ranger Holland, Little sketched portraits of his victims from memory, his hand moving with a chilling familiarity as he recreated the faces of the women he had extinguished. These drawings, often haunting in their detail and emotional detachment, served as a chilling counterpoint to his confessions. They captured not just physical likeness but also a sense of the victims' personalities, a flicker of the life that Little had stolen. In his own twisted way, he was creating a macabre gallery of souls lost, a visual testament to his reign of terror. Law enforcement agencies across the country began circulating these drawings, hoping to put names to the faces, to provide closure to families who had long given up hope. Each drawing, a piece of a larger puzzle, offered a glimmer of hope in the face of unimaginable darkness. The act of creation, for Little, seemed to serve a dual purpose. It was both a form of confession, a way to unburden himself of the weight of his crimes, and a means of asserting control, of shaping the narrative of his life and death. In his mind, these drawings were not acts of remorse but testaments to his power, his ability to create and destroy, to hold life and death in his hands. Samuel Little's death in prison in 2020 marked the end of a dark chapter in American history. His crimes left an unimaginable trail of pain and suffering across the nation. Yet, his death brought little solace to the families of his victims. Little's legacy is a chilling reminder of systemic failures. His victims, mostly marginalized women, were often overlooked and forgotten. Their disappearances failed to spark the urgency they deserved. Their stories serve as a stark indictment of a system that fails to protect the vulnerable. Law enforcement agencies grappled with identifying his remaining victims, to bring closure to families and learn from past mistakes. Each identified victim is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Samuel Little's story compels us to confront uncomfortable truths, to work towards a future where every life is valued and every voice heard. Only then can we hope to prevent such horrors from happening again.